What's going on, everyone? As you can tell, don't have much of a voice today, but we're going to do a live show here with Alexi from Boostpower. Pretty excited to do this one. I met Alexi pretty much through another show that I did, and so we're going to add him right here. And then we'll kick this thing off. What's going on, man?
What's up? How are you?
Good. You clean up a lot nicer than I do.
Man, I just had to take a quick shower and get all the grease off of me. How's your voice?
I just drank some tea, so
Nice.
I'm working on it. I'm going to add this to a few pages really quick here, river whips and river rats and stuff like that, and then we'll kick this thing off.
Sounds good.
Let's see. We got river whips. I'm going to let you do most of the talking because, yeah, obviously, I don't know how well anyone's going to be able to hear me, so.
Yeah, you need a swig of water there, buddy.
Yeah, I got it right here. Let's see. Let's do river. Okay. So what's going on, man? How was your Friday?
Friday, this was a long week, you know, that right before 4th of July rush. It's nuts. We've been here day and night, 3 a.m., 10 at night, back and forth and back and forth. So I'm kind of glad it's Friday.
I hear you on that one.
How about you?
Oh, it was good, man. Just a normal Friday. We're just glad at this point to be staying in town this weekend. So
Nice.
we've been traveling a lot.
I wish I could say the same.
Well, where are you off to?
I'll be in a plane in Las Vegas tomorrow just for the day and then back.
Right on.
Just a quick in and out for business. And one of my buddy's birthdays as well.
Gotcha.
So we try to combine both, you know. It's always a good time.
Well, I'm really excited to do this thing with you. I appreciate you being so willing to do it. I mean, I reached out to you and you said absolutely. And I kind of seen the wealth of knowledge that you have about engines, about mechanicals type stuff. And then I watched a few of your marine tech stuff, and that was cool too. So I thought it'd be cool today to get you on the show and kind of talk a little bit about Boostpower, the company, and what you're doing, but as well kind of maybe do a little bit of tech stuff too. So
yeah, why not?
So give us a little rundown.
We love the tech stuff. It's a lot of fun to actually give back and, you know, teach people some of the stuff that we get questioned on every day. You know, and it's nice. The way we kind of evolved with that is we learned a long time ago that if we educate our customer a little bit more about their high performance product, it makes our and their life easier. So, because they understand the animal that they've created or purchased or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like you get in a sand car and you got to know you got to warm up the oil. You can't just go out there and rail on it, and you got to check your tire pressures. So in the boats, it's kind of like the same thing. You got to warm up your out-drive oil and your engine oil. And if you teach the people that may or may not know that, they might have better luck with their equipment, even though the computers these days are kind of watching what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why we decided, I don't know, about 3 years ago to do our Boostpower TV Tech Show. You know, we periodically do it. We were originally doing it every Tuesday. So now we're just kind of doing it at will and whenever we have a chance to, which is still pretty often. It's usually once every other week or sometimes 3 days in a row. And we just figure people are watching them later. So it works out good that way.
Now, when you do the Boostpower TV, the tech shows, do you have a guest on each time? Is there some shows where you are just talking about a certain subject?
The format that we did was a lot of people type in questions to our deal, and or if our staff comes to me with something good that they heard on the phone that day or whatever, or myself, we usually archive it and try to hit those subjects. We try to pick subjects that are actually relative to what guys at home are actually doing, you know, stuff that people don't want to maybe dive into. We want to dive into it. We want to do the opposite of, you know, shying away from something. We want to teach you all about it because it just makes it a better, you know, better experience for everybody. But with the guests that we usually have is Jimmy Biro. He's not here today, but he usually is here with me. And he reads off some of the questions that are coming online, and then I read off whatever's in the email on our screen. So that's kind of our format. And, you know, we've just been doing it like that and having a good time with it.
So where is Boost Power, and what is kind of like your mission statement? Are you guys just a strictly motor builder, or motor builder, electronics, turbo specialist? What is kind of your specialty over there?
You know, it's funny you ask. We're so different than we were from day one. I mean, our specialty today is exotic builds, you know, kind of like the guys that, you know, want to do one-off projects. So I would say that, you know, back in the early 90s, we did more volume of 800 horsepower motors, which were to us the best thing in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And now today it's like 1500 is like where we start. But, you know, obviously we have our production engines we sell for cars, boats. We also sell a lot of partial engines, which is our main business, short blocks, long blocks, rotating assemblies and things for other builders to complete or people at home. You know, a lot of guys have a really nice motor that they bought from a really good name brand, not ours even, and they just want a new long block, and they know we have them sitting here. So they just call up and say, hey, you know, these guys do pretty good. Let's just buy a long block, and we can put our other name valve covers back on it. So we kind of just never really discriminated against that and just build a volume of motors.
So do you specialize more in LS stuff, or the Ilmor stuff, or Ford stuff? I mean, what do you see the most of through your shop?
Yeah, so through our shop, we see mostly conventional V8 type engines. And our stuff is mainly V8 platform, so mainly big block Chevy. A lot of the automotive stuff we do still is conventional non-LS because it's an older hot rods.
Yeah.
They haven't all converted over yet to the LS platform, and some just don't want to. And I think it's just because the age category, you know, some of the old school guys, they like the old 383s and 350s. So we stock those too for them. But, you know, we do a lot of LSs too, and we have some here that we've done for marine engines. They just haven't really taken in the high performance world yet. I'll say yet because I think it's going that way because you can get a lot of torque, as you know, with all the sand cars. You can get a lot of torque out of those little packages, and you can fit a lot of them in a little places. You know what I mean? So
Well,
I think it's going that way.
it's kind of funny too to see, I'm more in the sand car world and I'm getting into the boat world. But it's funny because you'll see like a certain number of horsepower, these guys are running LS motors. And then as soon
Right,
as they want to break that one mark, then it's back to a
right.
big block Chevy or, a specialty motor like something you might build.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so the car guys have gone. I think they've pushed the LS platform pretty high at this point. And with the LS platform, I mean, you're kind of limited on cubic inches, right? So even in the marine world, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there building 1,300 horsepower motors on 572s, 632s. So, you know, about 6 years ago, we developed our 800 cubic inch platform, which is a billet block, now cast, blah, blah, blah. Never really sold more than about 8 of them. They didn't really take too well yet, but they may. So, but we definitely had a place for them. So, like in our industry, the sand car industry, there's always people seeking more. They want more power, something different. And I think that the more power and something different together makes someone make a change. A lot of people always tell me, you know, I really like your stuff because it's different. It's outside the box. And I say to myself, you know, I kind of thrive on that because I don't want to just build a 540 with a Whipple charger. Nothing against the Whipple charger. I sell them and I build them. But you know what I'm saying? I want our stuff to always look different. And I think that in the sand car world, it's the same way.
Yeah.
You don't want to just see a buckshot or a Tatum or one of those, you know, really nice cars. Illumicraft, I think, is the other one. But you know, I'm still new with all the terminology on there. I've just been studying the engine cages, you know, the tubular section of the transmissions. But you know, they want something different. They don't want to, you know, you go to the, what is it, Oldsmobile, and everybody's got the same thing. You know, it's like twin turbo this, twin turbo LS, twin turbo LS. They all bought it at the same grocery market. You know what I mean? But there's room for change. So I think that's why you and I are talking because, you know, we've probably done, I don't know, 40 or 50 sand car stuff, motors in the past 5 years, and just really, we don't advertise it. It just kind of falls on our lap because maybe they have boats. So they're already our customer. And a lot of times we accidentally get into doing some tow vehicle mods because of it. But, you know, yeah, you know how it goes in business. You're just kind of doing, all right, you're accommodating your customer somehow. But so I don't know. I just difference, you know, we're kind of up on technology. You know, a lot of the sandcar guys want PDM control, all the dash buttons and all that stuff. The boat guys just literally in the past, I would say 3 years, started doing that more so than they ever have. Now almost every boat comes with like a dash.
Yeah.
It has like one TV screen that's NEMA 2000 and does everything. Where like in the sand cars, it's all CAN bus, you know, Motec or whatever they're using, AEM. And that's how they all put it all together now. And, you know, so I would say that we're kind of at a turning point with what people want and the products and technology that's available to them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And you know something, and you know this is kind of a question off the top of my head. So, let's say that I have a an older, or not necessarily an older boat. I have a mid 2000s Eliminator, but it's got a carbureted motor on it. So, is there any? I don't need any electronics with that motor, right? That motor is all
well, it's your motor's mechanical,
mechanical. Yeah,
other than the ignition system's got an electronic
yeah,
CDI box, or depending on what it came with. But yeah, for the most part, that's a mechanical deal. You know, something happens to it, you take it out, send it to the junkyard, and just buy a long block from a company like ours or whoever's your provider. And it's faster, easier. You don't have to worry about the machine shop, blah, 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 blah. And it's within $500 nowadays. You know what I mean? It's not worth having it rebuilt half the time.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But at least our customers tell us that, because we buy such volume that, you know, the price is right and we still make a few bucks.
So, what are the
So,
big advantages to going all the electronic stuff in your eyes?
so on the boats, and it applies to the sand cars too, from reports from others that go more than I do to the dunes. You know, your cold start and your ability to fire the thing up by pushing a button and not standing there and priming your carburetor, accelerator pumps, and spraying, you know, E85 in the bug catcher and trying to get an alcohol deal up and running. I mean, you push a button, if they're tuned right and they start and run idle and they're dialed. I mean, you can put your gear on and not worry about it stalling and concentrate on your safety and get in your vehicle or boat and go have a good time. Not to mention the drivability and the protection circuits they have. You know, I mean, can you imagine if you like didn't warm up your oil and maybe your buddy took off and you want to take off, but you got a light telling you, hey, wait a minute till your stuff warms up.
Yeah,
You know, those are the things the new ECUs, if they're programmed right, will tell you. You know, you can have multicolored lights on the dash that say, you know, blue for warm up, green for go, you know, based on pre-programmed temperatures. You can have, you know, all kinds of alarms with low oil pressure, tire slip, traction control. I mean, we even have the traction control systems that we've used on the AEM product. We can put them on the outdrive or on the drive shaft of the boats. So like a lot of times these twin engine boats, when they roll up on plane, they blow out the propellers and the driver actually has to pull back on the throttle and wait until the cavitation's gone and then they hook up again. So it'd be like in the sand cars when you're going, you know, straight down along the beach and you barely put the clutch in, it's just slipping and doing nothing for a minute. So you can tell the computer, look, let the guy keep the throttle position 3/4 throttle, but don't let it over rev.
yeah,
Just hold them in that perfect power zone until it loads up. And then when it loads up, back the timing off a little bit so it doesn't have that. You know, there's a situation where when these boats slip and come up on plane, they're slipping, right? And then all of a sudden there's a huge load change. Like it's like 0 to 7 pounds of boost, and the RPM drops. A lot of people don't realize that, but we simulate that on our dyno, and there's a split second of detonation that can occur if your engine's not set up for it. So the computer sees this, and the tuner knows this, and you can actually pre-program the computer to say, hey, as soon as this happens, back 5 degrees out of the timing, richen it up a little bit, and let the guy get set, and then put it back to normal X amount of milliseconds later. You can't do that with a
no,
carburetor.
no,
You know, my dad, he's 92 years old. He used to, you know, run the throttles up on the carbureted boat and then back off and hit it a couple times to get a squirt in there so it wouldn't do the same thing back in who knows when, you know? So it's just like, you know, it's nothing new. It's the fact that you can actually program something to do it. So that makes it kind of neat.
So like in that situation, what you're just talking about, if a bad tuner didn't know what he was doing, that detonation point, that could blow a brand new motor, right?
Right. So, I mean, without stepping on any feet, some of the tuners out there are really good at tuning, but they don't have the equipment to see what I see. Or I'm spoiled. I get to see stuff here and everywhere else because I travel and do different things with different companies. So I learn from others just as much as they learn from me. It's just, they have to eventually figure out why this is happening and make a correction for it. But it's no different. You might want a rev limiter in your Albin's transmission set up on your Sandcar or your Mendiola, so you don't hit the gears at a certain point. Like first gear might be 7,500, but second gear you want it to be 6,000. I mean, how many ECUs and computers do you know that will allow you to have multiple shift rev limits per gear, or even a tuner that even thought of it?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't think of those things because they don't need it.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, it's like I used to go to the hardware store with my dad, and he'd say, okay, let's go every aisle. And I'm like, why would I want to go every aisle? Who wants to look at? He says, you never know. When your eyes see something and you go do a project later, you'll know that was at that store on that aisle, and that they had something that can make your next thing work. So take it in like a computer hard drive and learn what's here. So this is kind of like been my mentality, you know what I mean?
That sounds like some superhuman shit right there.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Lack of sleep, man. I think of this stuff in my sleep too. I wake up with dyno pulls in my head. So, I'm gonna
visit the people that just joined. Greg Atkins just came in and said I'm late. So Greg, nice of you to join us. Glad that you found time for us.
Nice.
Anyone who's watching, if you guys have questions for Alexi, make sure you comment or comment on the stuff we're talking about, and Alexi, or probably not me, but Alexi can answer it for you. So
yeah, you never know. It's been a long day. I'm half asleep, but I'll do my best.
Let's talk about some crazy builds. What's the craziest ones you've seen, man?
That's been a topic lately. My compound motor, my little 21-foot boat's always kind of been a showstopper or whatever, and we use it for skiing and playing and kind of everything. Like it's our fun. Like I can't believe you can ski or tube with this boat. We leave it up at Lake Nacimiento, and it's kind of been a kind of a test bed for me. So we did the engine, and we had two other ones that went abroad for racing use, but mine's the only one that's been for pleasure use. We just finished another one that's here now, and we're making some changes from all the data we've collected. And there's one more being built here in the room next to me that's really exotic, and it's going to be hopefully above 4,000 horsepower on E85, E98, and 1,800 horsepower easily on gas. It's 800 cubic inch compound with an 8.3 Whipple with 200 millimeter turbos feeding it. So we learned a lot compounding. Again, I'm going to bring my dad up. He was in the trucking business his whole life, and they had supercharged 6V and 8V71 diesels. So they had a supercharger with a turbo feeding it. And I used to scratch my head as a kid going, why do they have both? What is this all about? So when I was a kid, I made a clay mold of what I thought would be a cool boat motor, kind of a combination of an old Gentry turbo and a supercharged one of those. And that was the first compound motor that I ever built. And ever since then, I think we have like 7 of them for boats that we've ever done, one being here still now behind me, and a few others that are in the works for going into some twin engine boats, which would be really neat. So, a lot of people ask me questions like, oh, do you really need both? Well, no. Do you really need more horsepower in your car? No. The answer is no. You don't. We have 3,500 horsepower turbo motors that are 580 inches. We have, we have LS motors that are 1,200 horsepower and they're tiny. You know what I mean? So, it's kind of a funny question, but we do it because we can, and we have guys out there that actually want to be able to utilize the power for different type of drivability, and again, it's just different, and we've kind of mastered that setup, and now we're pushing in the we were never able to fine tune a big endurance engine to handle much more than 20 pounds of boost. I mean, that's all we ever did. You know, that was like a big deal, 20 pounds of boost back when I was a younger kid. And even today, I mean, most of your guys' top end engines are what, 13, 14 pounds. I mean, what do you see in the sand cars? I'm seeing something like 12, 15 pounds, 20
Yeah.
pounds on a turbo deal.
Yeah.
And that's just for a quick zip. I mean, we're talking continuous duty, wide open pulls for hours. You know, that's kind of what we're trying to do. So one of the things we spent a lot of time with on my engine that I built for myself, and one that we have currently here for test only, is being able to maintain 40 pounds. So these motors, you know, a lot of times people build engines that are, you know, 7.5 to 1 was like the buzzword, you know, and that way you could put more boost in it, and your final compression with all that put together equals this. And well, I went down to 4 to 1 and 5 to 1. I made it like ridiculous. Like I have the pistons down 1/2 inch in the hole, you know, just to see what was possible. And we learned a lot by doing that. I mean, we can run 40 pounds of boost with a tremendous amount. I didn't even think the injectors that we bought were enough. 16 of them, you know, over 1,000 cc injectors, and I mean that's a lot of fuel, right? now they're building them for us that are bigger, and we're like, well, we need bigger injectors and we need more of them. So you know, it's just, we call it our special division here. It's kind of like, you know, we try to run our smaller company like a big corporation with buzzwords like that, but you know, we have an engine room. Like I'm sitting in the room where we only have special projects. So there's 4 or 5 different engines here that we do different R&D with in our own little way here. But that's a crazy build. And then we also like our 800 cubic inch naturally aspirated motor. You know, it's an 8,500 RPM motor. And, you know, I've gotten, you know, what do you call them? Hate emails. There's no way it goes 8,500. How do you get that thing going? Well, if the cylinder is almost 6 inches big and you still have a short stroke and you have a giant cylinder head, it works. It's very simple. A 350 Chevy, I mean, your grandmother's old, you know, whatever it was, Camaro probably went 7,000 RPM with a small cam back in the day. So that's really all it is. It's no secret. It's just a giant long block, big cylinders and a shorter stroke, and it works really well. And again, though, it's not for everybody. These are all limited sales. You know, I think we have like 9 of those ever we built, you know. So, which for us, that's, you know, a couple a year. I mean, we've only had that platform for like 5 years now. And 2 of it was developmental. So anyway, so that, yeah, it's a fun little motor.
Fun little motor or fun big
motor? I got one
motor?
of them right here behind me. I can probably, I don't know if you can see it, but
This
is, all right, you see that thing?
Oh, yeah.
So these are giant turbos. My buddy at NRE built those for us, and our buddy Brad at Turbonetics, together, they kind of did a favor for us there. And then obviously this is an 8.3 Whipple with a few tricks inside. Eventually this will get the tubes that go here with the blow-offs. And we have a permanent bleeder in here because of the volume. A lot of guys on twin turbos, what they like to do is they like to have, you know, like an electronic wastegate here where we have them here and down below. What we do is, you know, on the wastegate setups, we don't want to slow the turbo down. Like in other words, like say you go up a hill and then you want to whack the throttle again, you got to wait for that turbo. In this situation, we keep the RPM of the turbo at full speed all the time, and we're just bleeding off what the engine's not using up here. That way, when you close the blade, which is inside this box, it's immediate. So the real benefit to this is it's immediate zero lag power and torque everywhere, and the ability to blow off or bleed off the big power and still drive around and pull your kids on a tube or just cruise up and down the beach in your sand car or whatever. That's the hard part. I mean, building this, someone could bolt a bunch of crap together and make anything work, but I don't know about how they're going to tune it. That's a science for us. But it's kind of cool. I mean, you can kind of see the front. This is our test engine. But it's kind of cool. It's pretty big.
That is huge.
Yeah, and then our naturally aspirated giant, you've probably seen dyno videos of, but it's right there. Let me try to focus for you. But that's one of the big high RPM deals. It's our test engine. We're playing with different brackets down here, and, you know. And we have 3 lids. Like this one was built for a low profile where the hatch was right here. I personally think it's ugly and boxy, but we made one that's all billet, you know, kind of has a hump in it at the top. And then we actually drilled it to run the fuel lines through in the back to cool the fuel. So we have that too, but it's not here today. But anyway, so those are kind of some cool projects. There's another one over here. I guess I can, let me see if I can get over here. I'm on a little chair. This, a lot of the boat guys have seen. It's just a regular Gentry twin turbo motor, basically. Back when I was a kid, these were designed, and then another builder kind of took it over and made it a little better. This one we built for a guy, and it's an all aluminum version with large turbos, all aluminum block, you know, 8 coils, you know, all the latest EFI stuff. And this one, as it sits, should be about 1,800 horsepower.
Oh my God.
Which is usually about 400 or 500 horsepower more than what, you know, the conventional setups like that are. So, you know, we'll see how that works for the guy. He's excited. It's really lightweight, and it's built kind of like super high RPM-y, where most of those things, they only go, you know, I don't know, 6,000 RPM is pretty common in the boat world. This one will go 8,400, you know. So and it'll live there. It's got special billet rocker arms we had made for it. Several different items, but it's kind of fun. And then
Now my buddy Emerson.
Look at the headers for the 800-incher. They're giant.
Holy crap!
I mean, they're big. Those are CMI made those for us, and those headers right there. I mean, they were about 10 grand for just the header. But what's cool is they're water jacketed, you know, so it makes it nice. You know, it keeps them cool in the boats. And some of the car stuff that we do is single wall. So, you know, that's kind of fun. And obviously there's several other cool packages that we're playing with now as well with the emissions. I don't know, you know, we have emissions issues in the sand car deal and boats. So what's nice about that is, you know, there's a lot of folks out there who, you know, there's Mercury Marine. They have their emissions engine, and some other builders, some of our competitors. And, you know, we do all our emissions testing here in-house for EPA, and we do a lot of the stuff that we do for other people right here in-house. So our dyno is all certified and set up for EPA, CARB, and all that. And, you know, our business is not necessarily production every day, go to a boat manufacturer products. It's usually rebuilders, partial assemblies, special products. But, you know, certification is the thing of the future. Like, you're going to have certain things certified. But, you know, it's like the problem some of the builders have is they have certified engines that nobody wants because you can't do anything to them. So what's the point of having them?
Yeah.
We want to come out, you know, we want to have, like, we've done all our testing on our 1,000 horse motor and our 825, which is pretty popular for us here in the United States. And those two will be certified. But, you know, will our 800 cubic inch, 8,000 RPM motor be? Believe it or not, it's on the list and it's done. And it actually passes the emissions test. But we don't know if we're actually going to offer that for California sale for a production boat.
Yeah.
You know, again, we're kind of a boutique compared to like Mercury.
I don't want to
sand car builders.
I don't want to get too far away from this question because I just wrote it down. But so Greg asked, you know, 496, leave it alone or put some power to it?
Well, you know, you probably saw some of the videos we put out on the 496. We just did a 496 that, you know, a guy wanted to rebuild. And it's a really boring, you know, 8.1 liter motor. They're like 425 horsepower. But, you know, they're actually a good little workhorse. The problem with some of those is the 496s, some of them came with steel cranks, some of them didn't. Some of them were off the, you know, top kick truck line at General Motors. Some of them were hand built. Some of them were built for generators. So you don't really know what you're getting sometimes when you take those apart. But, you know, we have a lot of options for those. The reason we have options and say others really don't is that's a king size LS motor. Like, to me, it was the world's dumbest thing to get rid of that platform. I actually like the motor. Not in its stock state, but, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you could do to that. Those heads are cathedral port. They flow a lot of air. And if you cam them right and put porting in them, they work really good. But the most powerful thing that most guys do is that we build a 540 stroker kit that goes into the stock block, or we sell an aftermarket block. You put all the stock stuff back on it in its stock configuration with our cam and tune, and they're only 500 horsepower, not a huge difference, but the torque goes up like 300 foot-pounds. And in a boat, you can go up like 4 prop sizes, still have that stock idle, stock reliability, and it works really good. And then, you know, the other option is to put like the Raylar cylinder head. We buy the heads from them and assemble them with our parts. We have our own cam and tuning, and then you can do 650, 625. We made valve cover spacers to fit real rocker arms in them instead of those junk ones that come from the factory for that type of cam, you know what I mean? It'd be like you not putting roller rockers on your sand car. You know? So we made some parts to accommodate all that stuff, and that works really good. And then the next package would be all of that with a Whipple charger, which we released a dyno video last week. We set that one up at 650 horsepower, but it'll go 750 all day long because the parts are all changed. You know, a lot of guys knock it because it's a 496, but not after we go through it. Really, it's not anymore. I mean, it has a new crank, new rods, new pistons, our valves, our valve springs, our retainers, our locks, our porting, our gaskets that Cometic makes. You know, so there's a lot of different things that we've actually broken. I don't know how many of those things trying to figure out how to make them work back in, I think it was like the early 2000s or whatever, when they were kind of getting popular. So when we see them for sale, sometimes we buy them and then we'll trick them out and leave them here as a long block. And, you know, a guy will come in and you can't get them anymore. So we like to have a couple laying around. So, you know, I mean, like I said, I'll never tell anybody I'm not different. I mean, I like some of the stock stuff that you can barely, you know, it's like, who doesn't like a 2JZ motor? I mean, you put 5 more pounds of boost on the thing and it's like a rocket ship. You know what I mean? The car guys are putting them in all kinds of cars. You know, we hear it every day. I mean, you know, it's a funny story. I was driving, we have a CTSV here that we're doing some work on for hopefully SEMA next year. And I was driving with a buddy of mine and we were talking about how not too long ago we were driving in his Camaro, which is about 900 horsepower. We helped him build it. He did most of the work, but we kind of engineered the stuff for him. And he says he got beat by some old Mercedes with a 2JZ in it, like he was standing still. And then they went again, and a Tesla beat both of them. And I was like, it's all fun and games until a Tesla goes by you with all the power that we have. Can you imagine a Tesla second car? Oh my gosh. So
those Teslas are no slum though. Those Teslas are fast.
It's ridiculous. I mean, my wife has one we've done a few things. We're working actually with getting a Tesla engine for a boat now. We made a speed controller. It's like an iPad. You know, not popular yet. We're kind of trying to get some sponsor stuff going for a test for that. But there's a lot to be said about those motors. They're coming on pretty strong. We've been doing a lot of battery research too. The batteries are pretty amazing. That's the deal. Once the batteries get perfected a little more and they're not so heavy, the boating market's going to be hot on that. I mean, the boat guys, they get in their boat and they go from point A to point B and hang out, drink beer, party, whatever they do, swim, and then they come back. So the actual boat is only being driven maybe for 1 hour a day. So if your batteries last 4 hours and you can still go about the same speed or maybe even better in some situations, what are you going to do? And you're outside. Your whole bow could be a solar panel. So
yeah.
This is coming. I mean, it's coming, and we want to be at the forefront of it because we understand the technology, and we're learning a lot more about it every day.
Someone earlier said mad scientist, and I'm deeming you the mad scientist right now. Like the ideas and the craziness that's coming out of you, it's inspiring.
It's
honestly, it's
funny.
great.
We call our 9-year-old the mad scientist because he's already playing with computer maps and he thinks it's a game, you know, to change all the colors and all the graphs. And he doesn't realize he's messing with like a 1,200 horsepower tune that I spent hours on. But he's the mad scientist. Stay tuned.
One of the questions that just came through was, do you recommend a Roots blower or a Whipple for a carbureted boat?
You know what? I like Roots blowers because they're old school looking and they fit in. But definitely a Whipple supercharger would be a better blower for anything really. I mean, they're just, the screw blower is more efficient for the same, you know, physical dimensional size and the amount of drag on that pulley. That's a big deal. I mean, it takes 200 horsepower or 300 horsepower, depending on what you're doing. I'm just using round numbers. It loads that crankshaft pretty good. And funny you say that. We had a conversation the other day about this. A guy was all mad because he bought this mail order engine from who knows where, and it was supposed to be supercharger ready, and it only had one keyway in it. And with a blower, normally we run 2 1/4-inch keys, or one at least on the other side. But I said, what kind of blower are you running? He goes, oh, it's just an old B&M, you know, Serpentine 177 blower. I said, don't worry about it. That's not going to drag anything, and it'll slip the belt. You know what I mean? So it all depends on how much drag you're putting on the load. I mean, you look at any of these dragsters, they're splined all the way to the crank. There's no harmonic balancer. It's just a spline because they have tremendous loads for that instant, you know, bang on the crankshaft. So, you know, it works out. But I prefer the Whipple for that. They're a little harder to tune. Some guys get a little frightened on how to tune them because the carburetor signals get lied to. You know, like when you put the carburetors on top of a Whipple supercharger, when you're in vacuum, you know, normally you know, the power valves in the carburetor, they'll start leaning out the motor thinking you're cruising, which is cool when you're cruising. But when you're wide open, that Whipple charger is pulling so much air signal through the carburetor, it thinks you're cruising again and leans out the motor and blows them up every time. So you got to make sure that if you choose the Whipple, you get a guy that knows the carburetors to set it up for you, because there's a handful of tricks you got to do for that. I mean, it's the same with blow-through, right? Blow-through carburetors, how many guys have screwed those up? You know, you got to put the foam floats in them or the thing doesn't work. I mean, it's just, you know, the sandcar guys, how many of them have those old Volkswagen blow-through turbos and
Yep.
all the old Chevys? I mean, they work. I mean, they're hard to tune to work everywhere, you know?
Yep. Let's
Yeah.
let's talk about some dyno talk. I kind of, you know, the stuff I've watched of yours recently, it seems like you're always kind of dyno testing. You know, how's that going? You know, what's the dyno life?
Well, you know, I mean, I like to say my day job is dynoing and tuning here at the shop, and then my before everybody in the world wakes up job is building bottom ends and measuring. That's kind of like what I do. I don't know. I am so eager every morning to dyno, or every day. My guys are eager to see their, you know, it's their product too. They like to see it run and hear it, and it's part of our life here. So it's probably our most favorite thing to do in this shop. Like, I'd rather dyno than go out to the water, because that's just me. I enjoy the water, believe me, but I really fall in love with dynoing. So when we dyno test, I mean, it's serious. Like, there's 3 guys. Different guys have different things to do, different things to monitor. We have mechanical gauges, we have CAN bus gauges, we have digital screens, we have loggers, cameras. We kind of have everything. And funny thing is, everybody always says, what are all these cameras in the room for? You worried about someone stealing it? And we're like, no. We learn more from watching the video afterwards than we do while we're doing it. Because while we're doing it, we're panicking half the time, because we're like, oh my God, the building's shaking. You know, or, oh my God, if there's a leak, oh my God, this, you know, we're freaking out on every engine because it's new, and, you know, you only run them for about 30 minutes and break them in, and then you're just wide open on them, you know? Make sure that, I mean, again, I'll refer back to my dad. He said, in the first 5 minutes, if you can't rail on the motor, don't build it. Okay. So that's what we do. I mean, they're either good out of the box or completely done, and they go in the trash. So we have a lot of fun with that, but, you know, we're sitting there tuning the other day with a laptop, and he comes over to the 5/16ths, and he goes, can't you just do it with this? You know, like an old carburetor. So, yes, we can, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, no, we do a lot of dyno testing for our motors, other brand motors, stock motors, you know, partial engines. One thing we like to do with our dyno, though, is run it 100% how it's in the boat. So when we dyno an engine, it's real. It's not this BS number with headers at 7,000 RPM, but when they give you the motor, it's at 5,000. It's like, well, why did you do that? Did you do that to lie to the customer? Because, I mean, the bottom line is, The power is what it is for the use you're using it. If you're gonna tell someone it's 1,000 horsepower and you're not, and it's really only 700 when you deliver it with the exhaust and water, then advertise it as a 700 because the guy's gonna be pissed. It's not gonna go anywhere. So a long time ago, we spent a lot of time and funds to build our dyno to accommodate 100% how it is in the water. The other thing we do is we baffle the exhaust. So if someone has a 20-inch pipe, we put a 20-inch baffle on it. If someone has an open, exhaust, we put an open exhaust on it. If a guy doesn't care, we'll put whatever on it. If one guy's dry, in other words, his tailpipe might have water in it, but the pipe's dry, then we'll run a dry pipe. So we try to make it as exact as we can. Power steering, alternator loaded, not just on there, it's loaded. Like we're pulling a load down on the alternator. So we get the real numbers. We like to say our stuff's a little underrated on power. And if you talk to some of the people that actually run our stuff, they'll tell you that this 800 horsepower feels more, so, we kind of like that, where it's the opposite with some other folks. And it's it's provable here. We've had them all on the dyno. Everybody's motor's been here. Sand car guys, stock GM, Ford racing, everything. Every one of them's been here. So we have a lot of knowledge. Makes us good and bad.
Greg just kind of came in with, he said, so what's the average horsepower loss to the prop versus engine dyno?
So that all depends on the type of gearbox you have, right? So a Bravo drive is typically minus 17 horsepower on a typical XR drive. So if you had, 117 horsepower engine, it would be only 100 as a prop. But, and it's really because of directional changes. You got two 90-degree changes, and in that 90-degree change is a bath of oil that gear has to swim in. So it's quite a bit of drag. The number 6 drive, wet sump, old style ones, they'll draw 100 to 105 horsepower or torque, right? I mean, you could shift them on neutral on the trailer, and it sounds like what it does in your regular boat. It loads it down. The newer ones are a lot better. I would say they're in the 50, 60 range. We haven't tested the new M8 as far as that goes, so I really don't know. But it's right in there too, I'm sure. But a lot of it has to do with, no matter what, when you do a directional change, you're going to lose power. And in that directional change, if you have a swimming pool of oil, you're going to lose power again, and you're going to have drag. So, again, I'm a small boat guy for personal use. I like these 21 Shahadas. My buddy owns the company, so since we were kids, we've played with them. There's a V drive in there, so it changes direction once. So you lose less power. The problem is the boat itself is inefficient compared to a stern drive. So you got to overgear them and do different things. But overall, they're a good time. And the power on a turbo 400, could be 40 horsepower in a car. Depends on how the valve bodies and the clutches and everything are set up. But, a good rule of thumb is 20 to 40 horsepower on the average deal is usually the loss. That's what we've seen. So
we had two guys just comment, how much loss with a V drive. And guys, he just answered that question. It's less change. So you said there's different factors with a V drive.
Yeah, it's less change because there's two gears in line. So really they're not switching. When you do a 180-degree change, it's different than doing a Z. You know what I mean? Or an S. When you do a V, there's two gears on top of each other doing this. So there's less of a change. The bad part about it is a V drive in general is a slipping boat. The propeller's slipping its whole life, the whole time it's driving. That's why prop ears get thrown. The prop looks like someone hit a sander to it. They get beat up underneath that boat. That people don't realize propellers wear out like tires. I see it literally every day here. Guys always call, do you have any used propellers? I'm like, do you buy used tires for your car? I mean, I get it if you want to test, but even if you test a used tire, you possibly could blow your tire and die. So it's like, I don't have a used propeller. I'm sorry. We took that off our inventory 20 years ago. We sell new propellers, and we have really good propellers that I've used. I will sell because I know that they've only been used for testing only. But I'm pretty strict about safety. Just been that way. But yeah, that's the deal. They wear out. I mean, how many times can you use your paddle tires? They look good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
Put that
mean,
glue underneath those paddles, you know, you call the guys at Scat Track and ask them how long you should use that tire. I mean, I know that when we go to Sabova to do the sand drags there with Bill Peterson, he uses those tires, I think, like one weekend, which is what, 4 runs? And then they got to spend big money on those. You know, those sand drag tires are, Eddie Knox will tell you if he's out there, he knows all about that. Those paddles are like, they're this deep. I don't know how the heck they glue them to work. I mean, we sit here and drink beer over how the hell do they glue those together? How do you do that? I mean, think about it. What kind of glue is that? It ain't no Gorilla Glue from the store. You know, it's crazy.
It's the specialty Gorilla Glue, the tire specialty one.
Man, it's amazing. That's like crazy technology. I'd love to learn. I'd love to go to like Goodyear or whoever makes those tires and show me what you do to make that paddle attached to the tire, and with 5,000 horsepower alcohol blown motor, how it doesn't fling them off. I mean, it's crazy. It's the stupidest thing that makes me wonder. So anyway, now you know why my brain doesn't ever stop. It's always thinking of these cuckoo things.
Thinking about glue and stuff. I think you've been smelling the glue a little bit.
Yeah, we're talking about glue on your show. How fun. You know?
So Greg's coming in with the questions. He said, other than the monster 800-inch motor, what would be your ultimate dream build to do?
You know, interestingly enough, I would like to do, and I'm going to do, and I'm in the process of doing 2 of them bolted together, which is, again, it's nothing new. The tractor pull guys do it all the time. The guys at American Ethanol have done a good job with it in their boat as well, putting 2 engines together. But I would like to do it with 2 of our 800-inch motors, first normally aspirated, and with 1 controller controlling the engine. And then I would like to maybe do a compound one, not for anybody's product or car or boat, just merely just to do it and document the power we can possibly make out of it. I don't think our dyno can hold down what we're about to build. I mean, our dyno brake is 2 of them bolted together, you know, and we shattered. There's one upstairs here. It's shattered, completely shattered, and it was like a 2,500 horsepower brake. That cost us $27,000 last year. So, and then we thought we might have been better than the dyno people, made our own. It lasted maybe 1 or 2 more pulls than theirs, and it broke. So now we just decided to buy 2 of the big brakes and not tell them, and we made a clamshell for it, and it's working really good for us. I mean, really, we need an eddy current dyno, but they're like $1 million. We're still using water brakes, but we're using double the flow. Like our water brake that stops the engine has 2-20 lines in it and 2 10-horse pumps pumping each from a 1,000-gallon tank into the brake. And the reason we do that is, you know, like a lot of the guys listening, they have V drives, you know, V drive type boats, and they run the turbo motors up in 2nd gear and then bang them into 3rd. That's kind of fun to do in those boats, but no dyno could simulate it. So I said, you know what? I want to be able to run it up and then manually just shift the dyno. And if you watch some of our videos, you'll actually see we have an 800 cubic inch motor where it goes through 3 shifts. So we have programmed shifts in our dyno, and the dyno manufacturer says, hey, how did you do that? And we said, I don't know. I think you're hearing something. You know, we don't want to get into that. I mean, the bottom line is we made them shift. So it worked pretty good. And we learn a lot from that because, you know, you've heard this with the sand car guys. Well, after you dyno it, you have to go dial it in on the sand or the lake. It's never perfect on the dyno, which is true for 99% of the guys out there, not us. When they leave here, we go verify them, but we almost never touch anything other than the customer saying, I really wanted to idle at 900 instead of 825. Can you adjust that? Sure, hit enter. And they're done. Yeah. Because we've tried to create a machine that works for our type of business, you know, and, you know, car guys want it too. They want to know that when they ramp up a rev limiter, you know, there's a lot of study on rev limiter that we've done. I know my buddy Aaron Haley out there, he's listening. He'll tell you a rev limiter, you know, if you overshoot a rev limiter, it's a problem. You know, what happens is a lot of people set their rev limiters at 6,000, even on the sand cars. But if you ramp up into that rev limiter at a high rate, you know, like right before a shift, it'll overshoot. So if this is your rev limiter, it overshoots to here.
Yeah.
So you're actually getting an 8,000 rev for a millisecond. The problem is your valve springs don't like that. Your engine is not set up for that. Your outdrive gearbox doesn't like that. So, you know, a lot of people have rev limiters, but when we worked with AEM on their rev limiter for the new Infinity ECU that we're doing with the Marine engines and some SAM cars, it has an anticipator in it. So when it sees a rate of change outside of what you're allowing the acceleration to be, it pulls the power back so it won't allow you to overshoot. No other ECU that I know of does it. None of them, which is kind of cool. But it's something I personally wanted that they fulfilled for us, working back and forth with the engineers, which we talk to them every day. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's a big deal to us. That's, you know, it saves motors, you know, just like we talked about the protection circuits. Everybody's spending a lot of money on this stuff. Sure, we're expensive. It's because we're in an expensive world. You know, you go into a jewelry store, no matter where you go to a jewelry store, they're expensive. So are boats. You know, it's just once you get used to it, now let's protect your investment and invest in a little technology. So it's kind of cool. The sandcar guys would dig that feature for sure because, you know, I mean, at the same time, you can, you know, open the wastegates on the turbos and slow it down a little bit if it sees it over speeding the system. We actually programmed a guy's engine. He used to rev his engine in Lake Havasu under the bridge. All he wanted was an engine that had 13-to-1 compression that sounded good. He didn't care if the boat even planed. So he says, I wanted to low up and idle, and I wanted the best sounding rev under that bridge. It was a big deal back in, you know, 2000 or whatever. People still do it. I laugh. And so he goes under there. You know, we get phone calls. Your buddy Joe, he's under there revving the crap out of his motor again. I said, don't worry, it's set up for that. It'll be fine. But, you know, things like that, if that's what you're building it to do, you know, like they have the Cackle Fest now. People do it with the cars. We had a car guy in here 2 days ago. He said, I want to build a 13-to-1 compression thing really loud with small pipes for this Cackle thing. And I'm like, what's that? He told me all about it. I said, you got to be kidding me. You do that now? I thought I knew all this stuff. I had no idea. I said, I'm going to go to a Cackle Fest. So anyway, I got off subject. Sorry about that.
We'll rope it back in with this. Todd Burnett says, are those sleeves on your shirt?
Yes. Yes. You know what? Todd's a longtime friend of mine from Lake Arrowhead, and we spent a lot of time in tank tops and no shirts together. But I didn't want to look unprofessional like I kind of do every day in my tank top. Yeah, that's people give me crap for that. I usually am wearing black tank top and a hat and either that or no shirt. And you know, I'm a little overweight compared to how I used to be, but I still take my shirt off. So it is what it is. You know? Run for the hills.
So another question we just had was, what kind of horsepower is the 800 naturally aspirated producing on pump gas?
Which one? The 800?
The 800, yep.
On pump gas, it can be 900, 1200, or 1325, depending on the RPM and the cam choice. But again, remember, it's not really like a production motor. So when we build these 800s, we kind of go over it with the customer and we pick one of 3 options. And again, we haven't built that many of them. I think it was 9 of them. I have to look. I think it's 8 or 9, including the one here that's for test. But
Gotcha.
yeah, we can do an 800 horse naturally aspirated motor a lot smaller. But the difference is this motor will run on 87 octane. It's low compression.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
It's kind of like a tractor pull type. It's all torque. It's all torque. It's a drive killer though. So you know, at low end, it's rough on the drives. You have to have like a SCX IMCO or something like that minimum to run one of these. I prefer a number 6 drive or a V drive with one of these. So I actually wanted to take this test engine when I go to rebuild my compound one, which is a year already behind, because you know how people, they don't work on their own stuff that much. I told my kids, I said, we'll run it this season and maybe I'll pop the motor out and we'll put this one in for the rest of the year to see how it works. Because this one here that I showed you earlier, I mean, this 1,500 horsepower, it's going to run as fast as I drive the boat most of the time now. You know what I mean? We only utilize 12 to 1,300 horsepower of the 2,500 that's there. I mean, you don't need it. But I got to tell you, this is a big question you guys all probably heard me answer or not. But the biggest reason I love the compound setup is all of you guys that have been in a turbocharged V-drive boat, and when you hit the throttle, how it puts you back, or like in a sand car that's pulling the wheels off the ground and you're still accelerating at a ridiculous rate, the compound is double. It's literally double. The acceleration on these things is a dyno drive brake in good time. So that is the reason I love it. It's like, I love accelerating. And when you're able to accelerate like this at 100 plus, that's pretty cool too. You know? I mean, when we drive our little boat at Lake Nacimiento and these big twin engine boats come up next to us, they cannot believe. They're like, what is that? You know, they cannot believe that they couldn't catch that boat. They're like, but some of them can. They go 160 miles an hour, you know, twin engine, you know, and I'm not going to drive like that with my family in the boat. And usually it's just one of us. But anyway, even if you're going a legitimate 100 miles an hour, that's pretty fast for a little cruiser, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For a long period of time, it's fun. You know, a lot of guys ask me that. They say, well, 100 mile an hour, a lot of boats go that fast. How many of those boats out there, you guys tell me, how many of your 100 mile an hour boats can stay at 100 miles an hour for 5 full minutes? Try it. You'll be here on Monday morning. You know what I mean? It's a lot more, it's a lot different when you hold it. Go on the freeway. Everyone's all, yeah, I went 120 in my Corvette. Okay, hold it at 100 for 5 minutes. Tell me how it's a different feeling. It's a different everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is like what we thrive on, this kind of information, because we learn from it, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, we're at an hour right now, so I think we
Nice.
might need to do a part 2 of this, of the Alexi show.
Absolutely. Whenever you want, it's all good. We're always here.
Because
we're always here.
We're about halfway through the topics, and I don't want to end it, but at the same time, I think we should come back and revisit some stuff if you're okay with that.
Hey, whatever you want, I'm good. We can do it next week for all I care.
So anyone that's listening, that sounds like a good idea to me. Let's do it next Friday, about the same time. Let's plan on doing part 2. This has been really like eye-opening to me, and I don't want it to, you know, I don't want it to.
We have a lot of content. We have a lot of content here. We can go over dyno stuff, and we can actually go on the dyno and do some different things, and you know what actually in the feed, you guys tell us what you want to hear, and Jake and I'll try to put something nice together for you guys, and it'll be fun. Absolutely, man.
Like I said, this has been great, and a lot of content, a lot of good information, and I think that I don't know. I think the next one will be just as good. So I appreciate you coming on today, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate all you guys watching in. Jake's a really good guy. Reached out to me and invited me on the show, and we do our tech TV thing, but sometimes, you know, we do them too long and they get boring. So we've been trying to do shorter clips and different things, you know, just periodic tech things. But you know, the main thing is we want to give back, and that's part of what this is all about. We want to have fun with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Again, I appreciate everybody out there who logged on and who will watch it later. And thanks again to you for inviting us on your show.
Thank you for coming on, man. You have a good Friday night, a good weekend.
I'll be in Vegas tomorrow. You coming?
Oh, come on. You can't rub that in.
Come on. I'll wake up there in the morning. You going?
No.
All right.
All right, buddy.
By the time you get there, I'll be back. All right, buddy.
All right. Have a good one, man.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.